Hey, I'm Jay Kumar, the BassBlaster, and this is your Seafoam and Kistler top 5 of the week in bass fishing. Number 1.
He did it again.
Yes, he did. It took him 4.5 years, but Brandon Palaniuk got his 6th Elite Series win, this one at Lake Okeechobee.
The prodigy prevails on Okeechobee and gets Bassmaster win number 7.
I mean, that's not really a long time considering the fact that most guys who fish the Bassmaster Elite Series never even win one tournament. And believe it or not, this is Brandon's 14th year on the Bassmaster Elite Series, and that gives him almost a win every other year on average.
Not too shabby.
That's pretty dang good. Anyhow, Okeechobee is different this year. Muddy, not as much grass if you can believe it. So the guys did a lot of running around to find areas to fish. Brandon looked around a lot and eventually found exactly one area to fish, a canal off the main lake. That was good, except 3 other guys found the exact same spot. Will Davis Jr., who finished 3rd, Greg DePalma, who finished 7th, and Tim Doobie, who finished down a little further. Now, some of the boats you're seeing there are spectators, but a couple of them are his competitors. Now, a cool deal is that Brandon was the last of the 4 to get there on the first day, and the other guys welcomed him in with open arms. And the second day, he was the first one there and returned the favor.
Woo! That's really touching.
All right, Brandon's particular juice there was a riprap bank that came down into like a flat with a trough around it. And somewhere around there too was a ridge with a hole that dipped into about 25 feet. In other words, it had it all except a logical place for big fish to reload from. But hey, whatever, they reloaded anyway every day. Now his main baits were a prototype Megabass crankbait in a sexy shaddish color, a Megabass Big M 4.0 crankbait in PM chartreuse, and a Megabass Canada jerkbait, which is a floater, but he weighted it so it was neutrally buoyant. He also caught a few fish on a couple big swim baits, a KGB and a Clutch Boss, and a Neko rigged worm. And of course, he always uses those Alpha Angler rods he designed. Now, if that bait selection sounds weird on Okeechobee, especially given the stick worm fest that was at the Toyota Series event on Okeechobee just a few weeks before, well, let's take a look. Number 2.
Power coming up. Power coming up.
Now, a couple weeks back at the MLF Toyota Series event on Lake Okeechobee, Florida, we saw your typical range of big O baits fished. A lot of stick worms, a lot of black and blue variations, and your bladed jig, chatterbait, Z-Man jackhammer. But in the Elite Series, a couple weeks after that, power techniques still dominated, but man, it was different. First, here's how the baits of the top 10 finishers at that Toyota event broke down. Now, stick worms, meaning of course Senko shapes, they dominated with the bladed jig, which was all Z-Man jackhammer, number 2 on the list, and a lot of flip plastics. Now check out what the top 10 fished at the Okeechobee Elite Series event. Still a lot of power techniques, but the swim jig dominated. Believe it or not, crankbaits were the second most deal and won it, of course. And only one guy in the top 10 used a stick worm, and only one other guy fished a jackhammer. How crazy is that? Now, either way, even though there was a little bit of finesse in the top 10 on the Bassmaster Elite, still power techniques dominated. Now you might be thinking, duh. Yeah, duh, it being Florida, but bear in mind the last time the Elites went through Florida, forward-facing sonar with a jerkbait won Okeechobee, and forward-facing sonar with a drop shot won Seminole. But this latest deal at Okeechobee proves that even though this is the forward-facing sonar, you still gotta
power up.
Dang straight. Number 3. Let's talk about Drew Gill. He won last weekend's Major League Fishing Bass Pro Tour event on Lake Murray, South Carolina. But before getting into that, let's take a quick look back at last year, his rookie year on that tour. He had a win, a second, a third, and 2/4 over 7 tournaments and didn't bomb the other 2.
Not bad.
Now this year on the Bass Pro Tour, he's got a win, a 7th, and an 11th in the first 3. And on the other 2 trails he's fishing, the MLF Invitationals and the Toyota Series, he's got a 2nd and 2 tenths. Is this normal? No, man, it's Abby something.
Abby who? Abby normal.
Yeah, it is Abby normal. And that's obviously because Drew ain't your typical cat. Now, he won at Murray using forward-facing sonar in the first period, fishing for fish schooling around bait, and also deep fish, real deep or deeper than most people were fishing on stumps. Now, his main bait for that deal was a jig head minnow, but the weird thing is that minnow color wasn't like a shad or a herring. In the non-forward-facing sonar periods, him and just about everybody else was all about fishing a bunch of docks. Now, he focused on docks in 5 to 8 feet, especially floating docks for reasons we'll talk about in a minute. And his main bait was one of his favorites, a Neko rig with a 7-inch Big Bite Baits Neko Rama worm, which he designed. Color was green pumpkin, black flake. He beat the mighty Jacob Wheeler after neither of them could catch one more fish in the last hour plus of the tournament. Now think about that for a second. 2 of the best fishermen on the planet, fishing one of the best bass lakes on the planet, couldn't get a bite in the last hour plus of the tournament? What does that mean?
That don't make no sense.
I guess it happens to everyone, man. Number 4. Drew Gill is a known forward-facing sonar ace, but obviously that's not all he's got going on, since he just won the Major League Fishing Bass Pro Tour event on Lake Murray, South Carolina. A little reminder that this year, the guys fishing the Bass Pro Tour can only use forward-facing sonar for 1 of 3 periods per day, meaning that 2/3 of the day they can't use it. Like just about everybody fishing that tournament, Drew spent that 2/3 of the day fishing docks.
There's too many of them. It's impossible.
Hey, actually, it's not impossible because there's so many fish in Murray and they like those docks. But what Drew focused on is what he calls bite percentage, meaning what could he fish that would give him the highest chance of getting bit. Now, that might sound obvious, but the thought process and refinement of his dock pattern is pretty cool. First, he realized from using his Garmin live scope in practice on the docks that those dock fish were acting weird. They would watch his Neko rig go to the bottom, and then after 5 or 10 seconds, they might swim down and take a look at it and either eat it or swim back up under the dock. He found that some of the fish that swam back up actually swam back down, looked at the bait again, and ate it 30 to 45 seconds later.
Bruh.
Now, in those 30 seconds, he might shake his slack to give that worm a little action, but still, that's a long time, man. So as Drew always does, he wasn't spending time fishing or prospecting in practice. He was analyzing the fish's behavior. He said that in the pre-scope days, guys would have assumed that those fish acting weird and biting like that were actually on the beds. So my question to you is, if you knew a suspended dockfish went down and looked at your bait and then swam back up and suspended under that dock, would you leave that bait there for another 30 to 45 seconds just to see what happened? I mean, Drew obviously did, and maybe we should too. Now, me personally, I think I'd be you know it. Number 5.
Some folks called it a sling blade. I call it a Kaiser blade.
And Jason Christie calls it a beatdown with a Colorado blade. Now, Jason, of course, won the Santee Cooper NPFL last weekend.
His first event with NPFL, and he's taking home the hardware.
Jason is a well-known top pro, of course, and is one of several top pros that chose to fish also the NPFLs this year. Why? Well, because it's no forward-facing sonar. Now, that doesn't mean that these guys hate forward-facing sonar at all, and Jason sure doesn't, because he won a Bassmaster Classic using it. But the NPFL does give them a chance to fish for 6 figures the way they came up fishing, and they're really, really good at it. Here's a little evidence. Check the top 10 finishers at Santee. A lot of names you recognize. Anyhow, this was the first NPFL tournament of the year, and it's set up exactly right for what Jason might be the best in the world at. Pre-spawn spinnerbaiting. Now, he basically only had a day of practice after driving from the Okeechobee Elite, and his plan was to cover dirtier water in the upper end of the lake in the hopes that pre-spawners would be there all 3 days, and that's exactly what happened. Even though he won by almost 10 pounds, he said it wasn't as easy as it might have looked. Now, when he's pre-spawn fishing with a spinnerbait, he says he has it in his hand all day long, and he's only fishing for 5 big bites. If he gets more than that, great, but he's only fishing for 5. Now, what got him those bites was a spinnerbait he designed, or actually a whole spinnerbait line he designed called the Booyah Covert series of spinnerbaits. Now, as usual for him in the pre-spawn, he was all about the single Colorado blade. He says that's because of the fish phase and the water. When the water's clearer and warmer in the spring, he'll go to a double Colorado blade. But when it's dirty and the pre-spawners are fresh and angry, he wants that single Colorado thump. Word is, when he walked off stage, he said,
It's good to be the king.
"It must be." That's all I got for you this week. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Seafoam and Kistler. See you next week. God bless you.